And welcome to a new Lead with Soft Skills podcast brought to you by Exec Crew. My name is JP Warren, and usually these podcasts are all about professional and personal development, whether you're a leader, whether you're a manager, or whether you're just an individual, just trying to get some personal development skills. Through conversations with people and through kind of my networks and kind of having a lot of good in-depth conversations with other entrepreneurs, business owners, managers, executives, we're learning that a lot of us kind of face the same struggles. The success and the glitter and all the sprinkles that are on top, there's a lot under the surface. And we are going to be using this platform, this podcast, as a way not only to provide some personal and professional development skills to you, but also kind of get in the minds of some people, some business owners, some founders, some entrepreneurs on their journey, and kind of maybe get some lessons of what we can learn from them. So without further ado, and this is brought to you by Exec Crew. If you're looking for a new men's leadership group for a real connections growth, support, check it out, www.connectioncrew.com. Check out Exec Crew. It's a new men's leadership group, and it's all part of it. It's all about sharing experiences, gaining support, and just kind of connecting with people who have been in your shoes before. So without further ado, this is the first guest that we're having on. Scott, what is going on, man?
Hello, JP. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. And for those that don't know, Scott, why don't you give a little brief introduction, and then we'll kick this off.
Cool. Yeah, my name is Scott Casso. Casso Land and Imaging Services is my business. We started out kind of being a service provider for landmen out in courthouses, pulling documents for them, making their job a little bit easier back at home base. We progressed from there using some of the same technology, the same equipment to help not just landmen, but operators and people like that digitize their records, whether that's land files, well files, whatever that is. And we found very quickly that that brought more stability to our workflow than the nature of the field work with oil and gas. And so from there, we've also pivoted a little bit and started bringing in new clients like manufacturing businesses. Yeah. Anyone that is sitting with a box of paper that has a plan to make it digital, host it somewhere, harvest the data from it. I mean, those are the types of people that we like talking with, and kind of the way that we see our business growing,
Dude, what a key piece right now is everything's moving to AI. Everyone's talking about getting everything digital. I feel like there's like closets and closets of cluttered like documents and all that other stuff that no one really wants to touch. No one knows it's back there, but they know that information's back there. So
absolutely,
y'all are coming in and bridging the analog with the AI.
Yeah. A lot of them are. There's a number of companies out there that have done a really good job keeping up with keeping their records digital. They put some big pushes back in the 90s or 2000s to gather up any documents that were floating around and digitize them and at least host them in like a document management system or on a server or something like that. And in the last year or so, we've seen that even that shifting from this document management system over to these AI systems where you can talk to the documents, you can ask them questions, you can also warehouse them for the security purposes of just needing a physical copy of that. That generally is the way that these companies the companies that have been doing this for a long time. It's really easy for them to merge into these AI systems. They take their stuff that was on the server, they throw it in something new, and that's pretty common. As software updates, you're merging things from one system to another, and that's kind of what's happening here. We have this whole entire group of people in the energy sector specifically that have not made that transition. Maybe in the 90s or 2000s, they said, hey, let's start making this digital moving forward, but they didn't do anything with the warehouse full of data. A lot of times this stuff gets passed around person to person, and there's not a lot of important stuff in there, just truthfully. But the day that there is a title report that's needed out of there, or the day that there is a lease that needs to be found in there, that can be extremely time consuming trying to go out and find these documents. We see people spending tens of thousands of dollars just in storage fees, keeping their documents sitting in boxes. They've been sitting there for years and years and years, and people almost forget about it. And so you've got these storage companies that, and I work closely with some of them.
Yeah.
Nothing negative to say about them, but they're able to sit back and just keep getting a check based off of these people not caring about these boxes sitting there. And,
Well,
you do.
it's like public storage. I mean, you just get a place for what, $200 a month, and don't worry about it. Next thing you know, it's like, why have I been paying money for this? I haven't even seen the stuff in 2 years.
Well, and that's probably a cheap scenario. A lot of people want the stuff up off the ground. They want some type of physical or digital security going along with it. And so that's been, the process is, and the big hurdle at the end of the day is the dollar sign. That's how a lot of these things work, is how expensive is this going to be to get these documents that we may or may not use frequently into a system, that is kind of new to people. So there's a lot of convincing going on, but I think the people that are harnessing this and the people that are seeing the value in it are going to take off really quickly. I mean, like I said, in the last 6 months to a year, we've seen so much progress in this space. And it's really with some progressive people, I think. It's people that, I think we've talked about this before, that, it's not people that want to harbor this knowledge. It's people that want to share this knowledge. It's people that want connections here. And the way I look at it is, competition can still exist, but you don't have to like hate that other person, and you can still share common knowledge. And, of course there's going to be proprietary things that come up, but I think through and through the industry, if we're trying to, make energy more efficient, get to the energy quicker, make it more reliable, all of these things, we need to be sharing our knowledge on that. And, it goes to show people like Colin McClellan over at Collide, and people like Jairus at Right Away, or at Roland. All of these guys are under the same, at least what I've seen is they're under the same umbrella of like, this data is here, this knowledge is here. How do we use this to be more efficient, and then we're starting to see that in these other industries. It just so happens one of the manufacturing companies we work with manufactures like downhole pieces of equipment that's, going into, so it's interesting. It wasn't a lead specifically through land or oil and gas, but it just so happens we're in Oklahoma. It just so happens that they're making oil field tools and downhole stuff, and so we're helping them digitize invoices. We're helping them digitize schematics for their guys working out in the warehouse. So now they don't have to walk to the office and check out a blueprint. They can sit there with their iPad and scroll through every blueprint they've ever had and figure out in real time what needs to be made. They can make these pieces quicker. They can get out to the field quicker. These are all custom pieces being built. They can take that turnaround time from 3 weeks to 2 weeks, or 2 weeks to 1 week. I mean, how much quicker are we getting to this, this bottom line here? And we can do it more efficiently. We can do it cheaper, all of these things. At least that's the way that I look at it,
That's the way you look at it. You know what? That's your value, man.
Pulling documents out of the courthouse or taking a banker's box full of shit and scanning it in. So,
well, let's kind of pull back. Let's kind of pull back from this. I mean, I kind of want to talk about kind of obviously, your journey as kind of a business owner and kind of starting your things. And from what you're saying, I mean, I'm kind of taking a guess here, but you started, obviously, scanning and digitizing files, right?
Mm-hmm.
However, you did it. How long you been kind of on the grind?
About 10 years.
About 10 years.
Yep.
You didn't start this for AI to begin utilize this. So you've been kind of part of this a rapidly changing market on what you provide, what it's used for. So let me ask you a question. When it comes to these pivots in your plan, or when it comes to these road bumps or challenges or things you need to navigate around whenever kind of you have a plan, but the current market doesn't really face that plan, how do you actually approach these challenges and approach these problems?
Diversification was the big thing for us, realizing that, the oil and gas market can change with the weather. Right. Someone sneezes and, all of a sudden half the landmen in Oklahoma are out of work, and I wanted stability, not just for myself, but also for the guys that work with us. We wanted to have the same faces showing up every day and doing the work for us. It makes it more consistent, makes a better product, and we get to develop relationships with these people. And so the way that we started diversifying was finding clients that needed things with the same technology that we had. So it was scanners and handheld cameras and things like that. And pre-COVID, we had a relationship with the Catholic Church out of Oklahoma City, and they had a pretty specific project where the data they had couldn't leave the facility, they couldn't
Yep.
leave the church, and so we had to come on site. They put this out to bid, and a number of companies basically told them, no, we won't come and do this on site. Well, we were so used to running out to courthouses and pulling data from there that it was no change for us. It's just putting a different technician
Yeah.
in this location. It just so happens to be historic documents or business essential documents and not oil and gas documents. And that was one of the quickest places to reopen after COVID. And so before courthouses even opened, we were back working for the Catholic Church. And that was the one thing that kept sticking in the back of my mind, like, hey, we need to find more of this to bring more stability to what we're doing. And that's when we started reaching out to operators, and occasionally they reach out to us, which is, a blessing.
Yeah.
But we started reaching out to them because it was the sector we knew the most. We knew what types of documents they would be handling, and maybe what their priorities were. You look at a warehouse of 4,000 bankers boxes, and everything in there is not what they need, but they may need title opinions, or they may need, drilling reports. And so we're able to sit there because we're familiar with this stuff and sort through and find the stuff they need. But the scanning side of things has really just been, one of the things that people ask me the most, I've been asked this the most over the last 3 months, or the response to this over the last 3 months has been something that I think has been challenging for me to overcome. And so it's things like this that really help get us there. It's, people are saying, what do you do? Or I didn't know you did that.
Yeah.
And that's really coming with the scanning side of things that we're providing. Yes, we are out in courthouses, but a lot of what we're doing is taking, hard paper copies of things and scanning it in, and so that is the future of what I see. At some point in Oklahoma, there's going to be a push to digitize all of the records that are out in these courthouses, and we're doing that currently. But to bring these available to people online, and I see there's an end of the road there. At some point, every document in Oklahoma will be available online, which means my original business would cease to exist, and that's okay. Hopefully we're a part of that transition. That's my hope. That's my goal. That's what we're working on. And so it's all of these constant pivots for us, like you were mentioning, and we've got to just be open and receptive to them. We don't know what's behind every door. We don't know what introduction we're going to, make at the next lunch we go to. And oftentimes it's things like this, interactions with you, someone that I'll never do business with. We'll have no reason. We're so far away in the industry that, aside from you wanting some family photos scanned in, like, we don't have any reason to be communicating other than we want the same goal of, like, let's connect, let's meet people. Who do I know? Who do you know?
Well, 100%. I think what's funny is, I've obviously seen your stuff for years, but we just got connected like 2 days ago.
Yep.
And then we just talked for the first time about a few hours ago. And now we're just doing a podcast. And for me, it was kind of like, I really kind of like, hearing, different, stories from other, dudes trying to build stuff, like, for example, you just brought up, like, man, what's kind of frustrating, you've been doing this for 10 years and people are saying, oh, I didn't know you did that. Like, how do you kind of like, obviously you're in the weeds of your business every single day. Like, when you hear something like that, what does it do to you? What does it kind of do to your mindset, and kind of like, where do you go from there? It's
kind of like a gut check initially. It's like, man, you're not doing what you need to do to get this name out there, but with limited budgets, we're a bootstrapped company with limited budgets. It's all, the time and effort that I'm putting into business development or getting, marketing out there. There's not some grand marketing company behind our LinkedIn posts and things like that. That's me sitting up late at night, sitting in my chair, writing these posts, and so it's frustrating to a degree, because it's like, I want everyone to know our name, I want the sign to be hanging on Main Street and everyone know who we are, but we're not there. And so it's also a motivating factor for me to wake up and reach out to people like you and say, hey, I love what you're doing. I want to be a part of it. I want to, selfishly get my business name out there, but I think there's value in people talking and people connecting, whether they have a common goal or whether they're just meeting each other. There's a human side to this too. You're just a dude behind that camera. I'm just a dude sitting over here, and that's a big part of it too. Our personal lives melt right into the business life, especially when you're running a company, and you've got to be able to adjust with that. You have kids, or I've had some medical things come up in my life that really made a change for me. It took my life a totally different direction, but that parallels with business for
Yeah,
my life. Almost 2 years ago now, I got diagnosed with epilepsy, and it was something that my doctor told me right out the gate: you got to stop drinking. And I had a problem with alcohol. I loved to party; it was fun, but I also found myself doing it when I was like bored and things like that. And so it was really a struggle for me to turn my life a different direction through that medical diagnosis. But it was at a time that if I hadn't, there would have been so much that passed me in business and so many things that went other directions. And we would have been sitting in a 250 square foot office that we had last year instead of the 2,500 square foot warehouse we're sitting in now, So the focus was needed there. The attention was needed there. But it all came from this personal thing in my life that directed what I was doing. And yeah, it's all positive right now, but it's, these road bumps, it's these hiccups, it's these, lightning bolts that say, hey, this is what we're doing. This is what we're doing today. This is not what we're doing, and that took seizures setting in for me to say, hey, how many times do you want to wake up in the hospital and not know where you are before you get the point of you need to change this in your personal life? And so much of that exact stuff applied into the business. And so I love what you're doing here of trying to hey, this isn't just business 101 over here. It's we have lives, we're humans, we have all sorts of things that go into all of this,
Dude, my relationship with alcohol, previously, it was kind of the same thing, I host dinners, like a good martini. I like this and all that stuff, but I kind of find myself in a similar boat. I'm 45 years old. And, you're doing this for so long, you can only I find I can only burn the candles both ends, and it got to a point, man, just like kind of what you were saying, dude. I know a lot of cats that have been, kind of in the same cycles, and you're right. Boozing stops to go from the celebratory, hey, let's get a drink, let's celebrate, to you're right. I'm bored. Oh, it's it's Tuesday, it's 5 or 4. It's time to kind of unwind. This is my habit. This is my routine. And dude, so I diverted till last November. And then again, the day after my birthday, my 45th birthday, and I was like, what am I doing? I'm making excuses to have martinis. Oh, I'll just cut this. I'll still have a martini here and there. But man, I'll tell you one thing, as a business owner, it sounds like you and I are kind of challenged with the same things, whether it's content, whether it's getting the name out there, whether it's people understanding what the fuck we do, which is kind of a struggle. But for me, man, once I decided, I'm going to prioritize, not waking up foggy, and I found this too, whenever I do drink, I'll wake up and there's already anxiety. You know what I mean? There's already anxiety of either stuff I haven't done, I'm not where I want to be, I have that destination anxiety. It just compounds a lot worse.
They call that the Sunday scaries.
Oh, bro, I had that every single day.
Yeah,
every single day.
I did too. I got so used to, once I realized what not having a hangover felt like, it was oh wow, that's what I was working at, a 75% all the time, and the thing is, you don't question it when the business is still growing and things are, what I consider at this point almost failing forward. It's to no credit to me, the business continued to grow, but it grew at such an incremental pace that, I could still be doing, what I was doing then, but we'd still be sitting in the tiny office. We wouldn't have been able to expand the way we have. We wouldn't be making these connections that we have.
You're saying 75%, man. That extra 25% is a huge deal.
Huge deal. Yeah, especially when you compound that over time.
Have you found your relationships with your old buddies when it came to you deciding no booze?
A lot of them have been really supportive. I think I'm lucky that my small group of friends are all really good friends. There's not really this just surface level relationship with a lot of the people in my life anymore. And so those that know what's going on with me are extremely supportive. And I have some other friends that are going through similar things, you know, whether it's neurological like I am. I have a close friend that goes through some neurological stuff, so we can relate. And you know, it's good to have that support. But it's challenging at times too. You know, I'd be lying if standing at NAPE at the bar at the Hilton lobby wasn't a difficult, you know, thing to say, hey, I'm going to have a water sitting here. But, you know, I remembered the whole night. I made some meaningful conversations, and it's one of those things where, like, it's uncomfortable, but you can do it. And that's challenging me in my business life too. Like, hey, there's this dude across the room that, like, he has either this ego surrounding him or this aura surrounding him that you feel like you can't go up and talk to him. And it's like, no, dude, fuck that. Like, you know, if you cannot drink around people, you can go up and meet some guy that you feel, you know, awkward. You know, you and I were talking earlier about, like, how do we increase, you know, visibility through content. And, you know, what's uncomfortable for me is being in front of a camera, you know, and that's something in the last few weeks that I've been, you know,
Good for you, man.
looking on of, like, hey, let's get in front of the camera. Let's put yourself in an awkward position and grow that comfort zone a little bit, you know?
Dude, like, first off, I love how you're bringing that up and that we are doing this. I mean, dude, you had no time to prep. It was like, oh, what are you doing today? Let's hop on a podcast. You're like, okay, I've only done one. Let's do this. But man, like, I find, like, a lot of my, you know, circles, like, you know, it becomes a habit. You know what I mean? Or, like, you know, now when I go out to these events that I host and all that stuff, and, like, the toughest part for me when I first started, you know, the no booze and all that stuff was, like, that one initial order. When the first order, when everyone's going around, like, what would be old fashioned? It's always old fashioned, old fashioned. And then they go to me, it's like, oh, what? Like Topo Chico. That is, and after that, it's kind of easy. But what I've noticed also that, number one, when more people are abstaining from alcohol, number one. But number two, also, man, it's such a risk to your career, and also, in my opinion, your career, because you get to a certain point. Let's say you are at a table with all these professionals. Let's say you are this, and you get kind of overserved or at a happy hour. I mean, even if you're a student coming out of school, you go to one of these happy hours, it can really kind of have some lasting negative impacts. Like, if you make an ass of yourself. I mean, for me, like, the benefits all there. For me, it's just finding out what do I do to relax at the end of the day, or what habit will I get into to relax versus, you know, having a beer or martini.
So I used to go to the bar just about every day at 5 o'clock. They'd pour me my beer as I walked in the door without me even asking for it. And, you know, I had to switch that. I wake up at 5 in the morning, I go to the gym, and all the same people are standing at the gym. They know what treadmill I'm getting on. And so it's that same, you know, it was the exchange of that, like, I needed that recognition still. I needed someone to know this is what I do. You know, I was the guy that went to the bar and had a good time, and this had to change to, this is a guy that shows up at the gym and has a good time, you know? And so it's those little differences, but my bar just happens to be, you know, a gym now. And for me, it's part of dealing with addictive behaviors, you know, but that's also, you play this into business, and it's like, well, when you can focus for a solid 18 hours in a day and be addicted to the work you're doing, you know, and understand that there's got to be balance, you know, there's a positive to that addiction. You know, I think, you know, it's the addiction of wanting to meet people, the addiction of wanting to, you know, expand my network. I think there is positive in these addictions, but you have to, like, harness them and point them the right direction, you know?
Man, I found it, though, man, as a business owner, I'm not sure if you get this, but there's a lot of self-doubt that I have. You know what I mean? Like, dude, I will have in the same day, I will go from having one of the most successful, what I feel, conversations. Are you like, oh my God, this is the future. Yes, I'm finally there. Literally to a couple hours later or 30 minutes later. I had a successful, like, seminar, for example. I was driving home and I'm like, oh, that was awesome. By the time I got to my house, 30 minutes later, I was in my head. I'm like, this is a house of cards, smoke and mirrors. It's all going to collapse tomorrow. Like, so, like, combining that with the depressant and all that stuff, like, man, that would have prolonged that self-doubt. And I find that whenever I do not have booze and all that stuff, like, all that stuff, like the self-doubt, like, oh, I could do this, but man, that's a lot of work I have to dive into. It's a lot of focus. I'm going to say what's comfortable. Man, I'm now, it's like, you know what, that's uncomfortable, but that's going to help me get further down the road. I'm just going to get on that right now.
And no judgment to anyone that's listening to
No,
this or anything like that. I imbibe for a long period of my life, and no judgment. A lot of people can do it in a very responsible manner, and it doesn't
yeah,
affect their day to day. But when you realize that you're operating at 75% and you're trying to run a business and you're trying to, enhance the lives of those around you, you have children, you have all these other things that, play into it. And then health comes into the equation. It's like, well, you've got to just make the right decision. And it's
it's
not
such a
easy, like you're
whole.
saying. Yeah, it's not easy, but will I look back on my deathbed and be glad that I did this? Yeah, I know I am. I know I am. You know, um, and there's
Well,
other
you brought,
challenges.
well,
I'm sorry.
you
Continue.
brought up. I'm kind of curious about you brought up your close circle of friends and all that stuff, which I dig that you have. But how has your friend circle groups and all that stuff evolved with you throughout your, I guess, your entrepreneurial journey? You started your company 10 years ago. How has your friendships have you seen kind of evolve as you evolve?
I think like anyone, some relationships fizzle and die, some relationships develop. Um, when I first started the company, it was just me, and about 3 years into the business, old neighbor of mine from college approached me and he said, my family used to run abstracts around Oklahoma, abstract offices. He said, I just got done with law school and I wrote my final dissertation on, land records in Oklahoma, and I'm really interested in developing something with you. And, I heard about your business. And, that was just like a relationship that we were neighbors, kind of buddies back in college. And that's now blossomed into, he is my partner. And, we were talking about this the other day. It's like a marriage, we were having a communication, not issue, but we were trying to clarify something together. And, when we hashed it out, it was like, this is how we do this with our lives. It's like, well, we do have, finances together. We've got a business we're running
Yeah,
together. It's like, you're my wife right now.
you're my work husband, bro.
And so that has really developed a lot. I also work with my brother. He's my older brother, and that has been very interesting. We've had knockdown, drag out fights. If we had an HR department, someone would have gotten fired. But it's got us to this point to, with me stopping drinking especially, I was able to start working on my relationship with him outside of work and inside of work. And we communicate so much. When you're able to get past something together with someone, as opposed to just like, hey, we're butting heads and we're ending it, there can be some beautiful things on the backside of
Oh,
that.
you build. I think when you work through, altercations or stuff like that, it's not you versus them. As long as you're
Yeah.
focused on the goal, 100% something beautiful come out
And
of
let
it.
me be clear, never, ever, ever work with friends or family. Never. Never. Just don't do it. But when you do it, make it work.
Good luck to you. Yeah, good
Yeah.
luck to you.
Make it
So,
work. Yeah.
what's been some of the toughest challenges, I guess, for you personally when it comes to kind of continue to build and grow a business? I mean, is it the self doubt? Is it the destination anxiety? Is it kind of dealing with the haters out there? I mean, what's
I'm a
going
nervous
on?
person. I'm a nervous person, and so I worry a lot. And I worry a lot about so much down. And my brother tells me, why do you worry about this so much? Well, I worry about the guys that we work for being able to pay their bills and all of those things. So I do go to bed at night, not just where is the financial status of the company right now. What projects do we have coming in? What's in the pipeline? But it's also, this was maybe a slow cycle for this person. How are they going to deal with this? Or they had to take off 5 days because of, a sick kid or something. How is that going to affect their financial situation? And so that is something, I don't know if that holds me back necessarily, but it's,
How do you deal with that? How do you deal? I mean, obviously, you're not.
therapy,
Yeah.
therapy,
I mean,
things
how do
like
you deal with
this.
like everything on your mind?
Yeah, I have a therapist I talk to. When I got diagnosed with epilepsy, my life changed overnight.
Okay.
So much of it, I couldn't drive anymore. I, couldn't drink. All of these things were part of my life. And so I got in touch with a therapist,
Yeah.
and I've been seeing her every week for the last year and a half. And she helps me, bridge this divide between family and work, and how that all gets intermingled, and how to deal with, the stresses of life and the things that are happening in my own medical world and, things like that. So therapy is a big part of it.
Dude, I think
Recommend it
there's
to anybody, some
no,
people look at it as a sign of weakness, or, my dad's generation. My dad's very supportive of this, but his generation was, well, there's something wrong if you've got to go to,
shut it down. Yeah.
and don't show emotion and things like that. If we stick at this too long, I mean, I don't doubt you get me to crying on here. So,
That's the goal of Lead with Soft Skills.
yeah, and I'm not opposed to that. That's the real emotions, and that's what I try to present myself online. Is like, Zach Coughlin is a really good friend of mine over at Forecast, and this plays into this. So, the development of my friends have also not just gone from like college buddies, it's gone to people in the industry that I like hanging out with, that I enjoy spending time with. And very much like you, Zach and I have no direct business lines together other than, I'll introduce him to someone, he'll introduce me to someone. Zach and I will never exchange money back and forth, unless I'm buying him a burger, and so it's people like that also integrate into this. I forgot what I was saying right before that and how he even came up, but
no, we're just talking about kind of like, I personally think, going to get, whether it's, listen, at the end of the day, you wish you can offload to your spouse, you wish you can offload to whatever, but sometimes you just need to vent about the same shit that's in your mind nonstop. Like, whether it's a therapist, a coach, or what, just getting a third party out there with a non-objective view. And honestly, you're right. There is a stigma around it. But I think that stigma is kind of going away, man. I really think the stigma of like seeking outside support, guidance, help, whatever that looks like, is kind of fizzling, man. Like,
sure.
You know what I mean? Like, I think self-help and kind of like taking care of yourself, not just your physical self, but your mental state also is a huge a piece to being a business owner.
Yeah, I think so too. And again, I'm not here to say like I'm holier than thou. I
You're not coming across that way.
Yeah, but it takes time to develop these things. It takes going to therapy to work through some of it. Some people don't need that, but I for one did. It helps having that neutral balance of someone to talk to, outlets for that. And sometimes we even find that at work. I know there's certain contractors that I can talk to, not to like vent necessarily, but like I can talk to them about, my brother maybe, how he's bugging me in the office. Is he bugging you out there too? And they're like, yep, he's bugging me out in the field too. It's like, okay, well, Eric's having a week,
How do you stay motivated and inspired? Because I mean, obviously it's a lonely road, it's a lonely journey, and it is isolating. The more people I talk to, it's very isolating. How do you stay kind of inspired?
I'm not trying to pat you on the back because we're sitting here on a podcast together, but it really is.
That's what I asked you to do.
It's chasing people like you. It's chasing people like my buddy Zach that are super motivated, that want to get their names out there, that are doing the exact same thing I'm doing. They're in this exact same stage. They're just guys. They're just humans. They may be gals too, not exclusive to guys, but they're just people that are after the same kind of common goal. They're in the same spot that I am. And so that motivates me to say, there's nothing different than this guy sitting on the screen across from me.
Yeah.
And how is, I see what you're doing. You're posting all the time. You're staying up with things. You're going to events. You're hosting events, and so that is what motivates me. The digital wildcatters guys throwing the wild parties and stuff. I mean, it's seeing that and seeing the energy around that.
Yeah.
The energy is what motivates me, and the potential to even get a slice of, what's out there. There's large, big box scanning companies that, have cornered certain markets. But in my head, it's like, we don't need that entire medical field. If we get 1% of it, what does that look like? Does that move the needle for our business? And people are scared to go into a place that, is so set in its ways or has done things for so long. They're afraid to disrupt things. There's a company that I'm not going to mention their name, but they kind of run the show, cornered the market, and what they call, their well log scanners. Well, a little bit of research and a little bit of,
Great.
using some open source and a little bit of motivation, we've found that we can turn what was a $10,000 buy into a $300 buy and have the same type of product coming out of it. And so it's things like that that motivate me. How can we disrupt this market? How can we disrupt the way that things have been going for a long time? And
what do you do when someone says, Scott, you can't do that, or that's are you a visionary, or are you like an operator? Let's get it done.
I am. Let's get it done. Yeah.
Let's get it done.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the thing, man. Even with all my content, even with all that stuff, on the surface, it looks like, wow, JP, you're blowing and going, you're so successful. But dude, kind of one of the things that again, leaving that seminar and driving home, getting real down on myself. Like one of the things that kind of keeps me kind of inspired too is like talking to people like you that have been in this business for 10 years, talking to other people that have been in my shoes before. That's like, whether, I'll be like, sit across the table with people. I'm like, wait, how do you have the same feelings I have? Like, you're crushing it. You're killing it. Like, they're like, well, I thought the same thing about you, So having these like real conversations where it's like
realizations almost of like, this is just,
yeah.
There, when we were talking about, the crew club and everything that you're doing, on the outside, it looks like there's an entire team behind you, a marketing team, a this, a that, and you come to talk to you and you're like, those are the many hats that I wear through this. And you find that in every one of these companies that's at this, I'm not saying that, you're not expansive, but that's at this like level of development that I think a lot of people are at. And, I don't know if that ever stops. I look at a lot of things. My therapist helps me with this of like, hey, Scott, there's not like a day where this just ends and everything's fine and it's all just, maybe that's the day you die, but like not an end here. And so it doesn't matter if you're, how old did you say you are? 40 something, 30 something, if you're 60 something, it really doesn't matter. There's all of these things that like, dude, you see behind the curtain and it's just another dude, it's just another dude.
I ran into a buddy of mine I haven't seen since college, and I was like, what are you doing? He said, man, I'm entrepreneurial. I've had this company for 20 years. I'm like, dang, first off, I'm that old. Dang. Second off, 20 years entrepreneurial. I was like, man, he's like, what are you up to? I'm like, I just started like 3 years ago. I was like, man, I can't wait to get where you're at. I'm always worried about the runway, this and that. He goes, bro, you never stop worrying about that. Yep. Like you never stop having I'm a month into my business anxiety.
Yeah.
Which to me is like shocking. It's like, when do I have that feeling where it's like I made it or I'm safe? Like, you know what I mean? So for me, that's kind of like reestablishing, like, okay, what does that look like? What does success look like for me?
So I guess it's just bad news for everyone that it's just full of anxiety and stress until the end. But, in my brain, I failed, or not I fail, I resist this feeling of like, this is what you can do. This is what you can do. This is the roof you have, I think if you put the time and effort, and it takes serious time and effort, but you put that in to what you believe in, it won't always pan out, but I'm going to give it the best freaking shot I can, and that's.
Well, I want to ask you about that
for my people. And I'm sorry, continue.
No. I interrupted you. That's what I do. My wife tells me I always interrupt people.
It's normally me. So.
No, you had something. You said something very interesting. Actually, I dove into this kind of last week personally. It's from a guy named Gay Hendricks, and he wrote this book, and it's called like the limiting belief thermostat or something like that, right? We all have a limit that we personally believe on, whether it's happiness, love, success, money, whatever that is. We have a belief that what we can make, and we either earn 10% above that or 10% below that, right? Something like that. How do you, first off, do you have these limiting beliefs? And second off, if you do have them, how do you kind of like challenge them? Because you have to challenge them to grow.
Yeah, I mean, those definitely exist 100%. Can I handle the stress of more growth? Can I know when to delegate properly? Is everyone that's working for me on board with the same goal? Are we aligning correctly?
So how do you check? I mean, but like getting everyone on order on stuff, like whether it's growth, whether it's getting that next level, like
it's getting excited about a project. It's making new connections with people. We got connected, to some large operators within the last couple of years, and that has just lit this fire under me of like, my God, there is so much data out there that needs to be digitized. And even if it's not all necessary, even if it's only 10% of that shit sitting in a warehouse, like there is a long process for this, and we need to get our names in front of more people and let them know this is what we do,
Yep.
and pivot correctly, and hope that we're making the right decisions and stand behind them firmly. And but there's also going to be breakups along the way too, and those are things that I think about throughout this. At points in me and my brother's life, there was things that got very close to us breaking up, and so you've got to be able, I think, to evaluate all of that. Sometimes there, and I'm not saying my brother's dead weight, but sometimes there is dead weight that's associated with the company. And um, I don't know if I have all the answers, but I'm working on some of them.
That's I'm not. I wish we had all the answers.
Yeah.
I'd be in a different space if I had all the answers. All right, 2 questions, kind of wrapping this up. We've been chatting for 40 minutes. Love it.
Yeah.
What are some kind of realities of business ownership or business growth that that a lot of people maybe not see on the outside, or kind of realities that you face personally when it comes to
Say that one more time.
like some realities of entrepreneurship, of realities of building your business that a lot of people that might not think about, like that, I got this good idea, I'm gonna go for it. It's like, man, there's a lot to that.
You're going to need to carry a notebook where you write everything down, because you're going to lose track of, the notes on my phone that pair to my computer, and I attribute some of it to my neurological condition of having bad memory, but I think everyone that's in a position like this carries a book around. And if you don't, that's probably what you should be doing to keep track of everything. There's a lot of good days, but there's also a lot of tough days. Like you said, where you're second guessing yourself. You're wondering how you're going to keep the lights on next month, but a lot of that for me went out, a lot of that second guessing, it's still there, but 50% of it's been ousted by stopping drinking. I mean, and again, that's just a me thing. But that confidence came back in my own self and what I'm doing here and the energy I'm putting in. It's not 40 hours a week and then 10 sitting at the bar. It's 50 solid going in,
I find myself like I'll get in this mode where like I got all my stuff done, the big ticket items I need to get done, all this stuff done. I got my family in the room. Okay, well, I'm done. I'm done for the day. And next thing you know, I'm like, no, I'm not. If I get done for the day, I'm not gonna be successful. If I get done for the day, I'm gonna be left behind. And it's so
for me too, turning that off.
It's so hard for me to unplug and be like, stop with this monkey. You don't have to build another graphic for a post in 2 weeks. Like, don't do that. Like, hang out with the family a little bit.
That's hard for me to do too. And and that might be an answer to this as well, is, a lot of people think when you're running the business, when you're owning it, or even it looks like it's being successful, that now that means you're out on the golf course every day. That means that you're sitting on the beach, and that's so far from the truth. And I see that in a lot of the really successful companies we work with. There was a manufacturing company, I was taking a tour of their production warehouse the other day. And the owner of the company is a multi-billion-dollar company, had his clipboard and his glasses on. He's going through checking machines. I mean, that dude is in there every day making sure things are running properly. He's a part of it. And, he faces those same challenges we do. I'm sure we can do a part 2 of this where we dive even deeper,
I'm not against that.
But I think what I've gotten out of this so far is like, let's look at everyone like another human. Know that guy sitting behind this wall probably wants to just talk to you about anything under the sun. Rather, work may work its way in there, but like, just be a human and talk. And
I found some of my biggest connections in this industry came from when I was going through a challenging period of my life 10 years ago. I was going through divorce. That was on my mind. I was, I thought it'd be around my daughter 24/7, 365 throughout the years. And that reality of like, I'm going to, be absent, but not absent, but, not, can't tuck her to bed, which sucks, you know what I mean? But it's a reality that you face. Dude, that was on my mind. So when I was showing up, I wasn't showing up, I was always there. And dude, you're right. Sometimes you don't want to talk work, and sometimes you bond and connect just by being vulnerable and sharing kind of struggles we're kind of going with. Cause like, dude, that really allowed me to get to a personal level with a lot of people, because whether they do, their buddies do.
Yeah. And I think about that a lot with alcohol, that like it lubricates that initial connection, so it's 2 or 3 times as hard when you're not drinking. But I think when you finally sink that hook when you're not drinking and you make that connection, it's the connection that's needed. It's that connection crew, baby.
Yeah, look at that, 100% plugging me. I love it. But I would say also this too. Like, I don't think you always think it's gonna be a quick success or a quick road. Like everything. One thing that I think I should realize is that everything takes time.
Yep.
Everything takes a lot more time, and just because you have a good idea, just because you have a good product, just because you have a service, it's going to sell itself. And it's frustrating. I'm sure you've been doing this for a decade. It's frustrating when you hear, "Oh, I didn't know you do that," or "What do y'all do?" It's like, bro, I've been living this, breathing this for 10 years, and you don't know. So everything takes time.
Yep.
That's what I would say.
Yeah, my partner says it'll happen when it happens.
Yeah, that is true. That's like
Yeah.
What's okay? Wrapping this up. And obviously, I would love to do a round 2 on this, but I think for content and listening skills, I think 45 minutes is good.
No,
what advice would you give to your younger self or to other people out there that are curious about maybe burning the ships, taking a step into the
yeah,
business?
I mean that, burn the ships, trust yourself. That was something that for the last 2 or 3 years I've had the hardest time doing, is trusting myself. And I feel like I've kind of rounded a corner in the last 6 months or something, where I've gotten that confidence back in what I'm doing in my business. And it's panning out. And if everything just smashes into a wall, at least I'll go to bed knowing that, like, I tried what I could. I trusted myself, and I think a lot of times your gut will steer you.
Well, how did you get that confidence back in yourself? I mean,
therapy, coaching, connecting with people, distancing myself from alcohol. Getting over all those humps.
Yeah, I think putting yourself, again, just what you're saying, like around the right groups, the not the inspirational circles, the aspirational circles, the ones that kind of like that want to see you do better, that want to see you succeed. Because a lot of times, man, like I'm sure you know this from your previous relationships, my previous relationships too. There's a lot of people in your life you expect that they're like, "Yeah, Scott, go. I want you to succeed," but they're kind of quiet, shadow haters. They're non-supporters.
Yep.
And that's a tough reality that a lot of business owners need to kind of face, that your circles might not look the same.
For sure.
And that's not
Things change. Things change.
Things change.
From my side of things, and here over at Casso Land, we certainly appreciate you having me on. I certainly appreciate it. We went from 72 hours ago of just knowing each other in passing, and I feel like we've been hanging out for the last 10 years. So.
Dude, definitely. So you're what?
Norman, Oklahoma. Yep.
Well, next time I'm up there, buddy, you got to take me some Norman places.
Absolutely. So again, I appreciate it, and we'll catch up.
So how can people connect with you? How can people connect with you and kind of
LinkedIn is
not just Oklahoma City you serve?
No, we work kind of anywhere. We have a warehouse where we can bring stuff in. We've got guys all over the place. Anywhere that courthouse documents are living or paper records are living, we want to talk to people about that. One of the easiest ways to get a hold of me is LinkedIn. I'm all over there. Someone doesn't have a LinkedIn, you can go to our website or find my number online through our website. But LinkedIn is going to be a place where if you message me right now, you'll probably get a message back in about 5 minutes. So
and for those listeners that's at the gym or in their cars, what is that website?
Should be www.cassoland.com. Let's just double check. It's been a minute since I've been on it.
Yeah,
it's either Casso Imaging or Casso Land. Let's double check.
We're going to find out. The great reveal.
Find out. It is CassoImaging.com, and I should have known that because my email, scott@CassoImaging.com. So there's that plug as well.
So if you're looking for to digitize, get into the and you know what's interesting too? It's like it's very interesting because like you said something when you just started talking 48 minutes ago that you're like companies that actually notice that there's a shift in the market, that notice a shift in the industry that's moving to AI, that's moving to this, like this is needed. And if you're not shifting with the market, and this isn't to you, this is to everyone. If you're not shifting with the market and you're not understanding current market trends or future market trends, then you do have a huge challenge being left behind. And I see that through my connection and training and all that stuff. For example, I mean, it's kind of like pulling teeth, getting people to get a communication seminar to help them in their sales process. Like you're doing the same thing. You're getting minimum results, which is low cost, which is, cheapest price and all that stuff. Don't you want to do something about that? But rather than do self-help, they're like, no, I'm gonna keep doing what I want to do. So it's like, you're going to be left behind.
Yeah.
You're devaluing the time of your customers.
Yep. Surround yourself with people that, want the same goals that you want to progress their lives forward, all of those types of little things,
Completely agree.
So I feel like I've been sitting on a high horse over here, but I'm really not trying to. It's just my own experiences and my own life. And I'm an open book. That's, how I treat this online platform that we meet so many people on is, I'm an open book. Ask me a question, I'll tell you.
Well, I think that's kind of what drew. I mean, obviously, again, it's shocking to me that, but I mean, I've known you for years, I feel like, just through your content, but I think that's what works. I think you putting yourself out there, being vulnerable, having these conversations, man, I think that's kind of what that's the secret sauce, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. I love that. It's the soft side of this,
So the soft side, exactly. Yep. Yeah, that's what makes us hard, man, the soft side. But anyway, that didn't sound right, but you know what I mean. So anyway, Scott, I appreciate you. If y'all want to check out Scott, connect with him, reach out with him, even if it's not for business, just kind of connect with them, kind of
sure.
his ear and kind of just connect, even if you're in Oklahoma City. So
we've got an open door policy here at the office. You need a place to chill for an hour, plug your computer in or desk to sit at.
Well, you got the room now, buddy.
Come on by. We'd love to see you.
You got the room now in that 2,500 square foot office now. So good stuff. Scott, thanks for coming on, buddy. And everyone that is interested in, thanks for tuning in to Lead with Soft Skills. You're interested into more of these conversations or kind of connect with a community of leaders that are men going through the same kind of struggles, challenges that, you want to connect. Again, these aspirational circles, that's what Exec Crew is all about. We're opening up memberships soon. And that's going to be kind of monthly calls, retreats, a support group, access directories, and all that fun stuff. So you're not alone in this journey. Scott, appreciate you, brother. Y'all be good.
Yep.
And we'll talk to you a little bit. Hey, let's get that up there again for the content.
Yeah.
All right, brother. All right, dude. I guess till then, we'll talk to you soon. Thanks everyone for tuning for Lead with Soft Skills. And hey, you're not alone in this journey. And keep on putting yourself around the right people and keep improving yourself because we believe in you. Talk to y'all soon.